I had a lot of folks that called me after my show last week where I was talking about the state of the market. I was really addressing some of the bigger picture concerns that I have, that other people that are in tune with the market and what's actually happening but behind the scenes are already aware of. And the problem is a lot of that information just frankly doesn't make its way to you. You're kind of handicapped by what the media chooses to share and not share, and how they can use information to spin a story. You have to remember that whenever we're looking at news and whenever we're, just talking about that industry in general, we're talking about things that have to be exciting to the public, right? So it's not like we're going to see a lot of news like, hey, things are just okay, no big deal. They're polarizing. They have to grab your attention. So you're going to see all the great things that they have to say about the market, and then at some point when the market turns, it's going to be all the negative things associated with that shift in the market. And, there are a lot of things I didn't even mention on last week's show, like how literally a third of all Americans have no retirement savings whatsoever. And another 23% of them have less than $10,000 saved. Over half of, the U.S. have less than $10,000 saved for retirement. So we've got a retirement crisis going on. If you look at, millennials, which should be a huge part of first-time home buyers, almost half of them would be in really rough shape. They would scramble to pay bills if they went without their next paycheck. A lot of them are living paycheck to paycheck. You've got almost 70% of millennials that have no savings for retirement. And then you've got issues like, almost 95% of all workers' pension funds are less than 60% funded right now. But there's one thing that I think is more important than anything, and that's the fact that, as we continue to stimulate the economy, we're going to have to pay for that in some way, shape, or form, right? We don't always just get access to free money. 25% of all U.S. dollars in circulation right now were printed in the past 13 months, 14 months. What's interesting, though, if you really look at things and you start to dive deep on this, is if you look at things like credit card delinquencies and defaults, I mean, they were spiking in February before COVID, before COVID hit. If you look at car loans and student loan defaults, they were close to record highs before COVID. So it's not like we were in incredible shape financially, economically, before COVID hit. I mean, you add 50 million plus jobless claims to that, you start to cut off unemployment benefits at some point. People will have to get back to work rather than choose the path of, well, it just makes more sense for me to stay home and collect unemployment rather than go and get a job and actually work and make the same or maybe less than I would by just sitting home and collecting unemployment. At some point in time, the music's going to stop here. Same thing with forbearances. At some point in time, those extensions are going to end. People are going to have to make a decision about what they're going to do with their house. And for those folks that purchased a home that, put 3.5% down, even with the appreciation that we've seen, which is about 15% in our market, by the way, which very closely matches what's happening nationally. By the time they go to sell it, and then you tack on, the cost of selling the property, the missed payments, and the cash that they don't have. Forbearance is not a forgiveness of payments. It's just a delay. It's, all right, hey, we're going to hit the pause button for a few months or 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. But then as soon as we hit the play button again, you owe us all that money that you missed. And a lot of folks don't have it. A lot of jobs just are not coming back. We're still struggling with that. So what's going to happen? I'll tell you basically what happened with COVID. Here's really what happened with COVID and why the real estate market is going so crazy right now. The reality is this. What COVID did to the housing market was cause people to consider moving now that would have likely moved in the next few years anyways. It really just accelerated that demand curve. People are living at home. They're working from home. They're realizing, this isn't really where I want to be. I've spent more time in my house in the past year than I have in the past 10 for a lot of folks. And so they're saying, what, it's time to make a change. And so what is that springboard that allows them to make that change? Low interest rates, affordability. People shop based on payment. We on the surface level, we look at price, but we look at price because we understand how much it's going to cost us. So really the most important thing here is payment. And like I mentioned in my last show, there is a huge difference between going from 2.5% to 4% interest as compared to something like a 6% to a 7% interest rate. 2.5% to 4% is a 20% increase in the monthly payment. That's going to price even more people out of the market. So we are going to talk about Biden's, infrastructure and jobs proposal, the American Jobs Plan, how his, $213 billion is essentially going to be spent on affordable housing and how that's going to impact the housing market. We'll get to that a little later on in the program. But the reality is this. For a lot of folks right now, they want to move. They just don't have the comfort level that if they put their home on the market, they'll have enough time to find something they want to buy. And so it's that in and of itself is the bottleneck to getting more inventory on the market. What you're seeing on the market is in no way, shape, or form a true representation of the people that want to sell right now. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. How do we, and I don't want to, kind of call people dominoes, but if you think about the process, I need to sell, I need to buy. If I'm going to buy something and they're selling something, they need to buy something. So if we start stacking up these dominoes, how do we get these dominoes to start tipping over and hitting one another? How do we find somebody that house to move into so that they don't put on their home on the market and run the risk of selling it and then not having anywhere to go? I mean, that's obviously not attractive for folks. And I'll tell you, in the almost 16 years that I've been selling real estate, I've never once made anybody homeless. So there are solutions here. I want to talk through these solutions. What can we do to make your offer look more attractive to somebody if you have a home to sell, rather than just going with a home sale contingency? There are some things out there that we can be doing to strengthen your position as somebody that needs to sell your home in order to buy another. So we'll talk about that when we come back, right here on the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And remember, if you want to reach out to me, if you have some questions about the market, if you're like so many other folks that we're working with right now that you see the opportunity, you see that it makes sense to sell now and buy something else, still take advantage of low interest rates, you're just nervous about not being able to find what you're looking for, call me. I'm telling you, we have a huge backlog of people that want to move right now. It's just a matter of finding inventory. And we have the inventory. It's just a matter of playing matchmaker. Who have I talked to, recently that wants to buy a home? And who have I talked to recently that wants to sell something similar to what that person wants to buy? That's how a lot of deals are getting done right now, whether you realize it or not. A lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes. So if you're in that camp, if you're in that category of folks that say, you know what, I would like to move, but I'm just really struggling to find something that makes sense for me to move into, call me, 843-400-8009. That's 843-400-8009. I'll walk you through how we identify properties for folks that are not publicly available. Or maybe you just want to find out how much your home is worth. Maybe you're planning on selling in 6 months from now. Let's establish a benchmark now of what your home is worth. Let's monitor the market over time. If we see some signals that lead us to believe it's going to start softening, maybe that is the pin that pops the bubble, so to speak, for you to go ahead and make that transition into a new home. So 843-400-8009 is the number to call or text. That's my personal number. Or check us out online. If you want to send me a message that way, you can. Listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned for more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.